This is OBE from GForce Software. It's a new plugin for Mac that models the Oberheim Eight Voice, which is of course one of the legendary behemoth synths of the 1970s. In fact, GForce are in a very exclusive club as owners of a real 8 Voice, and I saw it in the flesh when I visited their studio last year, which incidentally is when I first saw some prototypes of OBE. So this has been a very personal project for them and a very large undertaking on the coding side, but now it's here, which is really exciting. So the way I'm going to demonstrate it is the way I always do on my channel. I'll make a series of short demos followed by a brief explanation, which will in turn give you an overview of OBE. Let's go. So like the original 8 Voice, OBE is made of 8 Synthesizer expander modules, or SEMs, with one dedicated to each of the 8 voices. Each SEM on OBE has all the features of the originals, but has been updated with some very useful additions. On the front panel of a SEM you have 2 oscillators with pulse and sawtooth waves, pulse width modulation, phase sync, that wonderful variable state filter, 2 envelopes and an LFO. On the rear we add a third oscillator that can be used as a tone source or for audio rate or low frequency modulation. It also brings an additional sine wave and pink noise to the sonic palette. There's also assignable velocity sensitivity of numerous functions, filter tracking and aftertouch in this section too. So we can set up each SEM completely discreetly, or you can zoom in on one SEM, hit the group mode and edit them all together at the same time to create quick, uniform sounds. And basically this first demo was that. I started simple and made some nice pads, bass, plucky sequences and a soaring lead. So that's the bread and butter. Let's delve a little deeper. Okay, something completely different that time. So in each instance of OBE, there is an onboard sequencer that has up to 8 steps with numerous playback modes, rates and rhythmic options, but there's also different voice modes. And in this demonstration, I was using the mode that cycles through each SEM in order. So in combination with sequencing notes, I'm basically sequencing SEMs. And as mentioned before, each SEM can have a totally different sound setup on it. So that allowed me to make synth drums and sequences that are moving all over the place sonically, which makes it much more interesting to listen to than just the same continuous sound. Couple of other things to note here: you can copy and paste between SEMs, you can pan SEMs, and you can also use the offset button to change parameters on all SEMs together, but in relation to where they were individually set, which is so well thought through. You can also use the learn button to assign a CC to pretty much every parameter on the synth as well. So when you look at my MIDI in this instance, it's just CC information because the notes were coming from the onboard sequences. But you can also drag and drop the sequences as MIDI too, or just use MIDI in the first place. So it's intuitive to interface with regardless of your preferences for workflow. So this was all about the unison mode, which you find in the keyboard section. Now, as the name suggests, you press down one key and it triggers all 8 SEMs at the same time. But as each SEM can be set up with a completely different sound to its neighbours, this allows you to create some really complex and evolving textures that you can play back with just a single finger, which is immensely satisfying. And that will also be very handy for sound designers. Okay, let's move on. So this is where OBE really shows its character, I think, because it's easy to set it up so that the pitch is a little unstable and so that there's small differences between voices, even in what's basically a uniform patch. And that brings me to tuning. I had the oscillators tuned in intervals here, and there's continuous coarse and fine tuning on the SEMs, but also quantized tuning for convenience. There's a global detune to fatten things up here too, and this all adds up to stop OBE from being too precise and makes it behave more like a real synth does, I think. But if you want it tight and in tune, you can absolutely do that, of course. So I think that covers pretty much everything you'd want to do in that regard. There's loads more to talk about here: split modes, stacks, the finer detail of all the parameters, technical playbacks of each function. And you can find all that on the GForce Software YouTube channel and website, which I've linked in the description and pinned comment. But the purpose of this video is to give you an overview and a straight out of the box musical test to see and hear it in action. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to think, but let me know your opinions and questions in the comments and I'll answer as many as I can. Thank you to GForce Software and thank you very much for watching.